Hey, it's Ben. I'm here talking about gear again. This time, I've got my LTD Viper project guitar. So I have had this guitar forever. This was actually the first guitar that I ever owned. My dad got it for me when I turned 14, which would have been in early 2005. I was not familiar with LTD at the time, had never heard of a Viper, but I knew it kind of looked like an SG. I thought it was cool. It was black, which is the most metal color. So I was all over it, and that was the first guitar I owned. The body shape of the LTD Viper is really cool. I'm gonna try and move my dark shirt out of the way here. It's similar to an SG shape, obviously that's what inspires it, but it's also offset. So it kind of has like a very ghostly, swoopy type shape to it. I really like the shape of the Viper. I think it's really cool. Over time, I kind of just got tired of it, and the next guitar that I bought was a Jackson Dinky with the Floyd Rose, which for a teenager, there's nothing more fun than a Floyd Rose guitar, even if I wasn't necessarily the best at maintaining it. And kind of over the years, I just played the LTD less and less, even though there was nothing I necessarily disliked about it. I kind of grew to prefer guitars with longer scale lengths. I was starting to buy nicer guitars that had better pickups and electronics in them, and it just kind of collected dust in my room for a long time. Recently, my parents moved out of the house that I grew up in, and they were clearing basically every belonging of mine out. And my dad said, hey, do you want anything from your room? And so I drove back home to Pittsburgh, and I remembered this guitar has been sitting in my room, basically collecting dust for close to a decade at this point. So I decide I might as well take that, because it's either going to get thrown out, donated to the Goodwill, or I'm going to be able to find some kind of a use for it. And I banked on option 3. So fast forward a couple months, it is now spring of 2020, COVID has hit, there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, and I get the idea that I'm going to turn this old piece of junk into a project guitar. So what was the end goal of this project? Really, I wanted to turn the Viper into something that was a little bit more unique, closer to what my current tastes are, and I wanted to basically upgrade every part on the instrument that it was reasonable to upgrade. I'm going to go over every upgrade I made to this with my reasoning, and kind of at the end here give you my thoughts as to whether or not I thought this was worth it, whether this was a worthwhile use of my time and money, or if I was better off just sending this to who knows where and getting a brand new guitar for the amount of money that I paid. The overall vibe that I was going for with this guitar was I wanted it to look a little bit like one of those Black Beauty, I think they're called, Les Paul Customs with the gold hardware. I'm not a big Gibson guy, but I think those are just absolutely gorgeous, badass looking guitars. So that was kind of the visual vibe I was inspired by when I started this project. As far as what parts I decided to put on the guitar and why I decided to do it, let's start at the top with the tuners. So the LTD tuners on this guitar, the own brand tuners, were never super duper great to begin with. I never remember them being like bad, but the ones that were functional when I got the guitar back from my parents' house weren't great, just didn't feel the highest quality, and a couple of them were just straight up busted. I guess I just had it lean on a wall or something, and they were just kind of bent off the guitar at a crooked angle. It was not a good look. So I decided to go for hip shot, open gear, locking tuners. I thought this was the cleanest look that you can possibly get for tuners. That open gear locking tuner, mwah! I just love the look of that. It looks so classy. So there are no mounting screws on this. All you do is you line up the tuners on these little plates, and you screw them in from the top, and they're on. It's easy as that. They have not moved. I've had these tuners on the guitar forever, and this is totally stable, totally secure. A perfect fit. Didn't have to change anything about the routing for the tuning pegs. They're great. I really love them. The next thing that I replaced was the nut. So the nut on the original LTD was just a cheap plastic nut. Again, I don't ever remember having problems with tuning stability with it, but I thought, well, if I'm replacing all this other stuff on the guitar, I might as well get the nut as well. So I bought a fitted Graphtec Tusk XL nut. They do have one that's the appropriate size. I ordered it off their website. It fit. I did have to grind it down a little bit with sandpaper so that the strings wouldn't be too high. I did not do the greatest job at that. It was my first time trying to shape a nut to my liking, and I kind of took a little bit too much off. I'll put up the B-roll. You can kind of see I actually sanded it so vigorously that the edges are rolled off. It looks like it's kind of like not even flush. It is, it just looks like it isn't. It's sitting in there perfectly, it's glued in very nicely, but the edges are no longer square. They are now round because I over-sanded it. Looks kind of janky, but it works. It's a great nut. The guitar is super duper stable in terms of the tuning now. Didn't do anything with the frets. The frets were actually in remarkably good shape. It may be down to I just didn't play this guitar as much as I remembered, but the frets on this are actually in nicer shape than they are on some guitars that I have bought much more recently. So we'll see how long that lasts, but as far as I can see, whatever wire they were putting on this guitar, this old Indonesian LTD way back in like 2004, it seems to be holding up, so kudos to LTD for picking their fret wire. In the interest of objectivity, I'll point out it does have a teeny bit of fret sprout up on the very top few frets on either side. You can see the tang sticking out there. Most of the fret ends are still really smooth though, so considering it's an old cheap beater guitar, I decided not to do anything about that. It's probably hard to tell at this point, but I also wet sanded the neck. There was a really kind of not great high gloss finish all over the back of the neck. I have grown to really like satin or oiled necks. I thought the easiest way to kind of make the neck feel more like I wanted it to would be to just sand the gloss off. I looked up a guide on the internet to make sure that I wasn't doing anything wacko crazy, and basically I just progressively finer grit sandpaper across the back of the neck over a period of about 20 minutes. That's all it took, and it worked great. I have no complaints about how this neck feels, although like I mentioned, it's hard to tell that I did that now. It has re-glossed quite a bit since I originally sanded it. That just happens when you kind of try to turn a neck satin in that way. I may just do the same process again in the future. So now we come to the pickups. I took out both of the original own brand LTD pickups. I ran them through my current setup when I first brought the guitar to where I live now, and they were just super muddy. They weren't the worst pickups I've ever heard in my life, but I kind of wanted something a little bit brighter sounding, maybe a little bit more conducive to articulate playing, but I didn't want to get anything that was so high-end that I thought, well, if I don't like this, I'm going to be out $200, $300 and want to replace them again in the future. So I decided to kind of go with a crowd-pleasing pickup set that I knew I kind of wouldn't hate. I got a JB Jazz set. I'm familiar with the JB. I have one in my Jackson Dinky. I had never used a Jazz before, though. Compared to how it sounded before, both of the pickups are significantly brighter than what was originally in the guitar. Both of the pickups are significantly, I would say, higher output than what was originally in the guitar too. The JB in this guitar sounds markedly darker than it does in the Jackson, and I want to say that that's probably down to the scale length. So these are Gibson style scale lengths, meaning it's a 24 3/4 inch scale length. Same, basically, these are very similar guitars to the Eclipses or the EC series, except the body shape is different. So it's a 24 3/4 inch scale. I think that just contributes to a darker overall sound. To that end, the jazz in the neck is advertised, I think, as being a little bit brighter than a 59. In this guitar, it sounds darker than the 59 that is in my Jackson. So, make of that what you will. Again, I think a lot of that's probably down to the scale length, but they both sound good. The jazz is nice and warm. The JB is fuller on this guitar than it sounds in my Jackson. And I kind of like that. I like that it has a little bit of a different flavor, even if it's the same pickup. That's kind of neat to me. These are a Goto bridge and tailpiece. They're both Goto. I just looked up Goto Tunematic bridge gold, Goto Tunematic tailpiece gold, and that's what I got. It definitely weighs more than the old bridge. The screws are a lot less rusty on this. It just seems a little sturdier. Is it better for things like intonation adjustment and tuning stability? Probably, but I don't have like a lot of experimental data to hinge such a statement on, so I'll just say that I like the gold hardware. It looks cool. With the gold hardware on it, it kind of makes me think of like the Batman logo, like from the older Batman movies when they had a little bit more gold coloring in the logo. I don't know, it's just something that makes me think of. Knobs, I just went to my local music store and looked for gold knobs that look like this. No complaints, although they are a different shade of gold than the rest of the hardware, which is kind of weird if you look at it long enough, but at a glance, you'd never know. The switch, I upgraded to a nice sturdy switch. The switch was probably the shittiest part on the entire guitar. It was just real flimsy. I don't think it ever worked quite right. And really, in general, the electronics were the Achilles heel on that old LTD. Before I even stopped using it, the volume pot basically stopped working. It was stuck on 10. Obviously, that was replaced. The tone pot was also replaced. Weirdly, there's a different amount of friction on these pots, even though I bought two of the same pots. So I don't know what the deal with that is. It's much easier to turn the volume knob than it is to turn the tone knob. I rarely use the tone knob, though, so that doesn't really make much of a difference to me. Also replaced the output jack, but you'd never know it. And aside from that, the only other thing that I did to the guitar was put Dunlop strap locks on it. Why? I had Dunlop strap locks lying around. There was absolutely nothing wrong with the strap buttons on the original guitar. It actually had pretty nice strap buttons. They were big, and there's almost no way I can conceive of a strap sliding off of them. But I had black strap locks lying around, so I thought, you know, whatever, I'm gonna put some strap locks on this and call it a day. Ultimately, was this worth it? Did I achieve the goal that I set out to achieve, and was it worth the amount of time and money that I put into it? Well, let's start off with, did I achieve the goal I wanted to achieve? I think so. I mean, it definitely would not be mistaken for a custom shop instrument or anything like that, but I think this looks way, way sharper than the original guitar with the black hardware, and it's just a much nicer instrument to look at. When I see this, I want to pick it up. As far as I'm concerned, this has the vibe that I was going for. Would it look sharper if it had like a black neck? Maybe I could dye it so that it looked more like ebony, but I think it looks fine as is. Was it worth it? That's a more interesting question. So, essentially, in terms of the specs of this guitar, this is roughly equivalent now to a 1000 series LTD, or at least pre-stainless steel frets 1000 series LTD guitar. Same type of pickups, Seymour Duncan passive pickups. Those are usually, in terms of when you found one of those with passive pickups in it, it was usually Duncan's, probably like a JB59 or a JB Jazz set, like what I have in here. The Godot hardware is similar to what you'd find on a 1000 series LTD. You get nice nut, similar to a Graphtec nut, although I think sometimes LTD uses a different type of nut than Graphtec, I don't know. But a similar quality nut. And if anything, I think these are nicer tuners than what you get on 1000 series LTD. I don't think that they come with hipshot tuners, so that's an upgrade. However, you have to factor in the cost. So typically, if you're going to buy an LTD 1000 series guitar, and it's new, you're probably talking like a $900 to $1,000 purchase. If you're getting a used, in decent shape LTD 1000 series guitar, you're probably talking about paying $600 to $700. Maybe you can get one cheaper if it's a little bit banged up. And I mean, realistically, when you're talking about the condition of the guitar, I mean, this thing is banged up. There's a big crack here in the finish from when I dropped it on my front porch. It wasn't a gig bag, but I dropped it on the front porch, and I scribbled in with Sharpie marker wherever it broke the finish off. You can't really judge this against a new guitar because, I mean, this is, we'll say player's grade generously. So the benchmark that I really have to use when I'm assessing whether or not this was worth it was, did I put more than $600 or $700 into the guitar? So I'm going to add up part by part what everything cost me approximately. I've lost receipts, so I'm going to go with what I remember. So not counting tax, the Hipshot locking tuner set was about 60 bucks on Reverb. The nut was, I want to say, about 15. Pickups I bought used. They were about 75 bucks each, so 150 bucks total for the pickups. I also forgot to mention that I put gold screws in, although not all of the screws are gold. I have a couple silver screws that are still yet to be replaced. That cost me about $2 to get a set of gold screws. The bridge and tailpiece were about 30 bucks each. The switch and these knobs combined were probably about 20 bucks. I replaced the pots. I got nice pots in there, so we're probably talking now, again, probably another $30 to $40 on the pots and the output jack. So now we're up over 300 bucks. I forgot to even mention this. I suck at soldering, and I ended up having to pay a tech 30 bucks to solder the pickups and the output jack. Also factor in that this was originally a $200 instrument. We're already talking about basically $500 some have gone into this, and this is not counting the amount of time that I had to put into the guitar. So was it a screaming awesome deal and I got a $1,000 quality guitar for much less than I would have paid if I just straight up bought one off of Reverb? No, but I think it was a lot of fun to put it together. And there is probably no other guitar in the world that is quite like this one. I have the only LTD Viper 50 with this exact set of specifications on it. So that's kind of cool in and of itself. It has stuff on it that I like and that I would look for in a guitar. And now it has gone from something that was basically a relic, I mean literally a relic, something that was just old and lying around in my bedroom from when I was a kid, to something that I actually pick up and play and record with regularly. So I'll say that's a win. Could I have got a better guitar for the amount of money that I spent on this if I was a judicious reverb hunter? Sure. But it wouldn't have been a guitar that I put together myself. Alright, I have to end this video like in 5 seconds because I ran out of recording space on my phone. But I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be making more content in the future. Check out my music, 20,000fathoms.bandcamp.com. It's heavy metal. You'll like it. I played some of it in this video. Anyway, bye. Hope you're having a good day, and rock on.